From NPR in Los Angeles, I'm Tavis, Smiley. Our regular commentator, Professor Cornel West, is a man steeped in some of the world's greatest literature, the works of Chekhov, Ellison, Joyce, Baldwin, to list a few. Dr. West is always in pursuit of the overarching themes that make great literature relevant to our times, so it should come as no surprise that Dr. West can view war through a literary lens. Lately, he's given Shakespeare's Hamlet another look and sees it as an anti-war play. While the line reads to be or not to be, I suppose Dr. West sees the question as to make war or not to make war. We'll find out here in about 10 seconds. Indeed, he has become something of a literary giant himself of late. Dr. West, I saw Sunday, Democracy Matters, your new book on the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations.
Well, no, I'm very blessed, brother. Appreciate people going out to buy and read it and wrestle with it, and I hope that it touches lives. That's the bottom line, my brother.
Well, apparently it is, and climbing its way up the New York Times bestseller list. So once again, congratulations on Democracy Matters. All right, Dr. West, what are the overarching themes of Hamlet, and how do they tie into our present-day situation with regard to war?
Well, one, I think it's important to keep in mind that Hamlet is certainly one of the greatest, if not the greatest play written by one of the grandest poets that we know, is essentially, as C.S. Lewis puts it, about a man who's been given a task by a ghost, which is to say his father in armor instructs him to engage in violence. And, of course, the play itself has to do with the interval, the interim between, on the one hand, being told by a ghost to engage in violence, to murder Hamlet's stepfather, or, in fact, Hamlet wrestling with this particular order and wondering what is the alternative to violence, what is the alternative to murder, as it were. So, as William Blake would put it, it's very much about art versus empire, empire versus art. It's about imagination versus violence. It's about trying to provide some other option as opposed to revenge. And so what we actually have in this great text is a wrestling with issues that have great relevance for us today, because if we can use imagination, if somehow we can use art not simply in an exotic sense of it being isolated practice, but art in terms of living an artistic life and creating an art of dialogue which sits at the very center of what democracy is all about.
All right, help me out with this. I'm trying to see these parallels here. Hamlet's father, as I recall, is killed by his brother, and then the ghost of Hamlet's father orders Hamlet to seek revenge.
But he doesn't actually, he's not convinced that he ought. And so we've got 4 acts, as you recall, where he's wavering, reflecting on whether, in fact, he ought to follow through. And then Act 5, boom, the grave diggers, boom, he's got a rashness, boom, he's ready, in fact, to engage in the revenge. But he knows that revenge is wrong. He knows that murder is wrong, even as his father instructs him. And so there's a certain sense in which the base nature of human beings, revenge, murder, violence, is being pitted against a higher nature, which is imagination, art, empathy, sympathy, and so forth.
If you really want to stretch this, Dr. West, I don't know if you want to go this far, but I guess one could argue that the struggle in the soul of Hamlet is, shall we say, symbolic of the struggle for the soul of the United States, embodied in the choices that we have this year of Bush and Kerry.
Absolutely. I mean, it's embodied in the soul of each and every one of us, because each one of our souls is a battlefield for this struggle between revenge on the one hand and empathy on the other. But certainly at this particular historical moment where we're talking about war, and we're talking about violence not simply in the military sense of invasion and occupation of Iraq, but also the violence that's being done every day when you look at the decrepit schools, when you look at the unavailable health care, when you look at the shortage of jobs with a living wage. These are forms of indifference, the indifference that usually goes hand in hand with a certain kind of violence and even a certain kind of scorn and contempt. And we see this, of course, in the play with Hamlet vis-a-vis Ophelia, the kind of scorn and contempt that he has for her that leads toward her own suicide, as it were.
Correct me if I'm wrong about this, but doesn't Hamlet succumb to revenge in the end?
Yes, he does. He sure does. And that's part of the indictment of Shakespeare, that in the end, the worst comes out. In the end, all of the struggle, all of the introspection still results in the worst of who he is triumphing. And Shakespeare is making a certain statement. He's saying We live in a world in which there's a small oasis of magnanimity and nobility against a backdrop of immense barbarism and darkness. And how do we keep that nobility and magnanimity alive? Hamlet could not do it. And, of course, he dies the death of a warrior. He dies the death of someone whose legacy will be part of a militaristic and nationalistic legacy as opposed to a deeper artistic and humanistic one.
Speaking of deep, you're too deep for me, Dr. West. That was rich. Maybe I can get you to come by over the weekend and interpret Moby Dick. I don't get that one either.
Well, Herman Melville is profoundly Shakespearean, as is Duke Ellington, but that's another issue, too.
That is another issue, Dr. West. We'll do that another time. Cornel West, professor of religion at Princeton and the author of the best-selling, let me correct myself, the New York Times best-selling Democracy Matters, the follow-up to the best-selling Race Matters. As always, Dr. West, enlightened by your conversation.
Always a blessing, my brother.